All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the party 150 years in the making for a book 150 years in the making. The Sesquicentennial, cultivating 150 years of history in Marshall and Lyon County. Tonight, we are going to be not only releasing a book that's as unique as this community, but capping Marshall's year-long 150th anniversary. In doing so, we're going to be celebrating some of the individuals who helped create Marshall and Lyon County's history with select readings from the book by some of the people who worked on it. We're going to be hearing the story of the Marshall mayor who ran down a caravan of robbers and a local grocer who flew ammunition on D-Day and earned the nickname, the man with tons of death, from foreign newspapers. We're going to hear some historic stories that are landmarks of our community, including the announcement of a second railroad coming to Marshall in 1884, and of course, the Great Flood of 1957. We're also going to hear a few bizarre stories, including a staged fight to the death between a dog and a badger, and a harrowing midnight experience for one of Marshall's first newspaper publishers. In between these readings, Tim Deitz of Deitz Auctions will be helping us out in auctioning off copies 1 through 10 of the limited edition, first edition book, with all of those proceeds going to the Lyon County Historical Society. Now, during the process of researching this book, I've learned a lot about the history of Marshall and Lyon County, but a lesson from the present I've learned is what a great organization and the Historical Society is, and by extension, the museum. Its director, Jennifer Andrews, and collections manager, Paul Evanson, have done wonderful work in preserving our community's history, and it's a museum everyone can enjoy. As such, we're counting on you to help out this organization by bidding tonight and raising some money for them at the same time. If you don't get a chance to buy a book at the auction, they will also be for sale and available to be picked up if you've already bought a book in the governor's room, or in the Minnesota room, right back there. That will be available here in just a few minutes after we officially unveil the book. When sales of the book began in December, work on it had begun several months prior, after I was approached by members of the city's subcommittee for the Sesquicentennial for marketing and publicity. They were interested in starting some sort of weekly print column to publicize the city's 150th celebration. They asked me if I'd be interested in doing that, and I asked them with a question. I said, would you be interested in doing something much, much more than just a weekly column? They responded with unbridled enthusiasm that I'm sure a few of them regret today, or at least at a few points they did. After sharing with them the vision for the book, there was some obvious hesitancy. One of them asked, how much is this going to cost us? And I told him, well, nothing, and even more enthusiasm. And I told him, all I need you to do is help. Well, they thought, well, shoot, that's not too bad. We can help you out, read through some newspapers. Sounds like a casual, leisurely Saturday morning with a cup of coffee, right? Well, that wasn't quite that simple, they quickly learned. But from that moment forward, though several volunteers from that cursed committee joined me in that massive research project, which was researching 150 years of Marshall newspapers. What we did is we went through all of those newspapers and we pulled out the most interesting, the most historic, bizarre, funny, or relevant stories we could find. We mixed in a few photos from the Historical Society and from those old newspapers and designed the pages in a style that mirrored the papers of that era. What we ended up with, after all that was put in the pot and mixed together, was a 336-page behemoth of a book that weighs nearly 4 pounds. Or 15 quarter-pounders. With more, now to give you a better idea how big of a book this thing really is, there are, and I did count, 1,175 stories in it, along with 172 photos, not including the ones in the ads, and 4 original sketches in the introduction. With more than 300 pages and a 15-page introduction, this book has more than 320,000 words in it. That's more words than The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Sense and Sensibility, and Treasure Island combined. Now, another way to look at it, if you took every page from the 2,000 books we printed and laid them end to end consecutively, you would end up about 15 miles north of Sioux City, Iowa. So, it's a big book. Needless to say, a book of that size takes quite a bit of work. And the line, a book 150 years in the making, that's more than just a catchy phrase. To many of us, it's a real-life testament of how long it took to make this stinking book. But, to that end, before I officially unveil this book, the Sesquicentennial, I want to take just a few minutes to introduce some of the people who helped work on this and ask them to come up here and join me. First, our research team, who got to go through 150 years of newspapers. When they first heard, like I said, when they first heard you need to read and go through each newspaper, it sounded like fun. But they quickly learned how grueling a task it would be. Two people whose efforts were invaluable, and not only in the research, but throughout the entire project from start to finish, were Jim Tate, the former communications director at Southwest Minnesota State University and editor of The Independent, and Jan Luagi, the former director of the Historical Society. So come on up, you two. I really can't stress how important these two were and their contributions. Their dedication to this project was absolutely essential. And personally, I couldn't be more grateful for their support and words of encouragement they offered me when frustration and fatigue frequently set in. Without them, I'm fairly certain we'd all be doing something very different this Thursday evening. So thank you again, Jim and Jan. Other researchers who couldn't be here tonight included Cassie Weitz and Adri DeBear, and two other members of the aforementioned subcommittee, along with independent staff members who I'd like to come up here and join us now. Editor Mike Lamb, our news editor, Cindy Votruba, where's Cindy? Deb Gow, Chris Drummond, Sam Thiel, and Josh Van Klompenberg. Now, after these stories were selected, they had to be typed in. And individuals helping with that included Valerie Jansen and Kelly Hansen. Now, once the stories were typed, they had to be placed on pages, which was done by a couple designers we had, including the back half of the book was produced by Chelsea Lund, of Impressions by Chelsea. She did a fantastic job on that. And once those pages were designed, then they had to be proofread. And the proofreading team took over, and that group includes some names you've already heard, Jan and Jim, Mike Lamb and Cindy. And there's a couple new ones as well, Jane Wailaji and Jennifer Andries. Come on up. Jennifer, who is the current director, as I mentioned, of the current Historical Society, also wrote the introduction for the book, which also included, as I previously mentioned, some original sketches by one of the area's most talented artists, who's also here tonight, Mr. John Sterner. Where is John? There's John. Come on up, John. Also, I need to mention other independent staff, there are other members who helped with this included, I see Mr. Ryan Stramp. Ryan, come on up. He is the photo editor for the book. He's the individual who got to do all the scanning and doctoring up of those previously mentioned 172 pictures, and provided a lot of technical assistance along the way as well. And I should also mention the rest of the independent staff who have done a fantastic job. Jane Sobel is here. Maureen Sander will be available as well back in the Minnesota room helping hand out books. These people have helped pack boxes, answer phones, wait on customers and do all that, and also help pick up the slack that I left behind feverishly working on this book before our August deadline. And finally, the last group of people I need to mention and bring up here is my family. I already mentioned my wife. Actually, I haven't mentioned my wife. She has been roped into, she's typeset. She helped design ads. She's been on the marketing. She's helped coordinate the concessions. So come on up, Kim. Come on. Along with, I'd also like my children to come up as well. As it's often been said, if you are writing a book, your entire family is writing a book. And that is very true, as they all had to make sacrifices for this to come together. So that's enough jibber jabbering from me. So come on down here. Come on down a little farther down. Come on down, Evie, Clara, Jackson. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and unveil the book. After which, again, you can go to the Minnesota room if you need to pick one up. We're going to transition right into some readings then from the book as well. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and start a countdown. Evie, you going to help me out here and grab a book? No, not that one. We're going to grab right out of this box. All right, there you go, that one there. Okay, all right. Now, why don't we help her out? Let's do a countdown. Countdown from 5. Are we ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Left off. Hey, there we go. Whoops. There we go. Good job, Evie. Okay. Now, that book there is copy number 10. So, we're going to go ahead now, and if we could get everybody here a little closer together and take a quick group picture. Mr. Jake, and then we'll go ahead and start with the auction, or start with the readings and then the auction. All right, very good. Thank you. All right. Okay, and my readers, if you guys want to stick around up here, if you're reading, I've got your books. Jim. Thank you. Jane, there's yours. That one's mine. Cindy. Ryan. Uh-oh, I'm missing a few. Pear and Dana. Where's Pear and Dana? I think yours are. We'll catch it later. Okay. Oh. They're right here. Okay.
We're going to set up some more chairs, and then the auctioneer is here too.
Great. Okay, so now that the books are out, we're going to go ahead and start with some of the readings. I'm going to do with the first reading, and it's an article that's a first-hand account written by J.C. Irvin, the owner-editor of Marshall's first newspaper, the Prairie Schooner. He was born and raised in upstate New York and found his way to Iowa when the Civil War broke out. He served in the 1st Cavalry before moving to Minnesota to open up a little newspaper in a town less than a year old. The first edition was published August 23rd, 1873. And this article, which details an experience that may explain partially why Mr. Irvin only stayed in town about a year, was published about 3 weeks later. The headline for this story is A Midnight Conflict. Marshall is full of fleas. Every new town has them. They are the aborigines of the country and contend for their old stomping grounds. The reader will please pardon a little personal experience with fleas. We will first state wife and baby are absent on a visit. Also, we cannot afford any luxuries while running a country newspaper. Hence, we are no better off so far as fleas are concerned than women and barking quadrupeds. So, of course, we board. Thinking to save expense, we concluded to furnish our own bed, put it up in a vacant house, rented for housekeeping purposes when our better half returns. Well, the house was formerly occupied by railroad boarders. About 5 minutes after retiring, we experienced a feeling as of a dozen or more needles pricking different parts of the body. Our hands were passed spasmodically about to ascertain the cause, but we could feel nothing unusual. Just then, the printer who bunked with us began a series of quick, convulsive movements. Thinking he had an attack of St. Anthony's dance, we arose and lit the lamp. The printer said he felt better, but there was something in the bed. Cautiously turning down the bedclothes, we discovered what seemed to be a quantity of onion seed, nicely distributed. Immediately, the seeds commenced dancing like kernels of popcorn on a hot griddle. Simultaneously, we shouted, "Please!" and rushed to the attack. After clearing the bed and sifting through one or two unmentionable garments for the 20th time, we sought a horizontal position, hoping to forget our troubles in refreshing sleep. Vain hope. Scarcely had the lamp been extinguished before the implacable foe again assembled in myriads and commenced an onslaught upon our persons, compared with which the first was scarcely a foretaste. All at once, we thought of a method of defeat which promised success: kerosene. Quietly, the burner was removed from the lamp. Fingers were dipped in the usually repulsive fluid, and we began our kerosene bath. The neck and one shoulder were nicely saturated when there came to mind the horrid remembrance of a kerosene incident. Our big brother once poured kerosene upon a calf to kill insects, and the results were dead insects, also dead calf. Lucky we thought of that in time. We again lie down, thinking the disagreeable smell of the oil would certainly drive away anything that had life and a little sense. Not so. On the neck and greased shoulder was where they bit the worst. It seemed to give them an appetite. We can't remember exactly how we spent the remainder of that night. Next morning, we saw the sunrise. That day, when friends asked the cause of our constant gaping, we expressed a fear of an immediate attack of fever, but up to the present time, we have been unable to find anything that will neutralize the scent of kerosene oil. Okay, so now, after that reading, we're going to ask Mr. Deitz to come on up, and we are going to auction off book number 10. And make sure this is number 10. There it is, number 10 of 2000. So, Mr. Deitz, I will hand this over to you. Thank you, sir.
Well, it's a lot better looking at all you people than Tom McLaughlin, who was just in my combine. And when Greg asked me to do this 6 weeks ago, he said, call me just to remind me, because I know what we're going to be doing. But, so I was only 8 minutes away, so I probably didn't get dressed up, but this is, you'll just have to move your hand like this, and I think I've seen most of you know how to do that, and we'll sell this book right here. $10, 20, $20 and $20, $20, $10, and $20, $20, $20, $20, 10 and 20, $20 and $20 and $20 and 30, $30 and 20, now $30 and $30 and 40, $40 and $40 and $40 and 30, 40. I got 30 right here now, $40 and $40. I want to get 40 now, 50, Terry, $50 and 60, $60 and $60, $50 and 60, $50 and $60, $60, $50 and 60, 60, 70, $70 and $80, 80. Sharon want to give 80, now 90, $90 and 90, $90 and $100 and $100 and $100 and 110, 110, 110, $110, 10, 10, $110, $110, $110, 10, 10, $100 and 110, 110, 110. Terry want to get 110, 110, 110 and 20, 20, 20, 20, 30, 30, 30, 130, 120, 130, 120, 130, 130, 120, 130, 130, 130, 130. Now, was that your number in basketball? Number 10? It is? Well, then you need to have this one. 130? 140. 130, 140, 130, now 40. 130, now 40, 40, 40, 40, 130, 40, 40, 140. Are you trying to bid, Ed?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, when it gets over the shoulder, you're all in.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. But no, okay, just checking. 130, 140, 130, 140. Sold at $130. Terry Porter, number 10. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You guys must like the Historical Society as much as I do. I love to see that. Okay. Now, the next reading when people ask me what I think after reading through all these stories and all this history, you know, I will offer my services. If you put together, if there's a trivia contest, trivia team somewhere, and you need someone from Marshall history, I am available. But when someone asks me, they say, you know, what do I think the most important event in Marshall's history was? What's the most historic, the most significant? I don't have to hesitate. I point to this story that we're going to hear from 1884, and that was when Marshall had the second railroad come to town. At the time, Marshall and Lyon County were still struggling. They were struggling frontier settlements, especially economically. And their survival was anything but assured at the time. Farmers were plagued with grasshoppers, harsh weather, winds, but they were most plagued by the monopoly offered because of just one railroad coming through town. The county was losing population at the time because farmers just couldn't make it because of that monopoly. So when the second railroad came, that all changed in 1884 when the Great Northern announced plans to build a line from Duluth to Sioux Falls that would come through Marshall. But before that line could be built, transforming Marshall into a regional trade hub and ensuring its future, there had to be a county-wide vote to approve bonds for constructing the line through Lyon County. The amount, a whopping $40,000 to build the railroad. Now, this would be my first introduction to the rivalry that existed between Tracy and Marshall. Still stinging from the county seat being relocated in Marshall, Tracy, which served as a hub at the time for the competing Chicago and Northwestern line, was adamantly opposed to the second line coming through Marshall. And to the extent that they hired a New Ulm lawyer to go town to town and lobby residents to vote against the bond issue. Marshall papers at the time had several unkind words to describe this lawyer, including shyster, and accusing Tracy of hiring him simply because he could speak to the Swedish immigrants in their native tongue. Now, interesting though, this wouldn't be the last time we heard this lawyer's name, albeit in a much different light the next time he was in the newspapers when he ran for governor. His name was John Lind. Now, how did the future governor do in his lobbying? Well, Jan Louwagie is going to read an article from the February 29th, 1884 edition of the Messenger reporting the results of that election. Jan?
Another railroad, a rousing vote for the bonds, 724 to 156. 18 precincts poll the largest vote in the history of the county. 13 towns vote for the bonds, only 4 towns against. After 4 weeks of a thorough canvass of honest and efficient work by those favoring the project and desperate and dishonorable work by a few opposed, Lyon County on Saturday last cast an overwhelming vote to issue $40,000 in bonds for the building through the county of the Duluth, North Shore, and Southwestern Railroad. The total vote for the county was 880, of which 724 were in favor of granting bonds, and 156 were against, carrying the proposition nearly 5-1. But the wish of the county had been shown by a most overwhelming vote. 13 of the 17 towns voted favored the bonds. Of these, 7 towns cast all their votes for the bonds, while 5 of the other towns were there but had 1, 3, 3, 5, and 6 votes respectively against the bonds. To vote for the bonds, it was necessary to have a majority of the total vote cast and a majority of the towns, or 11 if all the towns had voted. In 12 of the towns, there were but 18 votes opposed to the bonds, and the same towns gave a total vote of 660 for the bonds. We commend these figures to the gentlemen who sought to prevent the voters of Lyon County from expressing their opinion at the ballot box. How far their efforts may have tended to increase the vote They will have to judge that themselves. Monroe, Eidsvold, and Nordland did not vote. Monroe is the headquarters of opposition, and her leaders dictated to Eidsvold against opening the polls, while Minneota controlled the polls of Nordland Township. The total vote for these towns would have been about 400, of which, say, 250 may have gone against the railroad proposition. Amoret did not open their polls till near noon, when men of independence and energy demanded their right to vote, and the result was, in Amoret, 15 ballots favorable and 3 unfavorable to the bonding.
This one here is number 9, and we have a total of 10. We've sold 1, so we'll have 8 left after this one. But we'll start this one at $20, $30, $30 and $30 and $30, $30, $30, $20, but now $30, $30 and $30. Want to get them in now $30 and $30 and $30, $30 and $40 and $40 and $30, $40, $40. Sharon, want to get $40 and $50, $50. Pam, want to now $50 and $50, $50 and $50 and $40, $50, $50. Now, but now $50 and $60, $60 and $60 and $60, $60, $50, $60, $60 and $60, $60, $60. Now, but now $60. How you doing, Lynn? $60, $60 and $60, $60, $50, $60, $50 and $60, $60, $60. And $70, $70 and $70, $70, $60 and $70, $70, $60 and $70, $70 and $70, $70, $60 and $70, $70, $70, $60 and $70, $70 and $70, $70, $60 and $70, $70, $70, $60 and $70. Sold, $60. Sharon Hanson, thank you.
Okay, very good. Now, I guess one thing I didn't announce beforehand, if you do buy a book at the auction, you can come see me afterwards and pay me, or if you just want to write a check directly to Jennifer, either way is fine. So, so we can take care of that. All right. During my opening remarks, I mentioned some of the stories we chose to publish weren't necessarily super significant or historic in nature. Some were more bizarre, funny, or just odd. This selection from the April 29, 1892 edition of the News Messenger is one of those such stories. It's difficult to imagine, at least it is for me, but in Lyon County in Marshall's early days, this tame, peaceful prairie was apparently populated by a rather large wolf population. In fact, they had so many wolves that the county paid bounties for their heads on an annual basis. Hundreds of dollars would be paid out. Now, as a result, though, needless to say, there were allegations every year of fraud of some sort, especially farmers apparently raising wolves for the purpose of harvesting them and then collecting the bounty. This story, though, that we're going to hear from former editor Dana Yost, well, let's just say this individual didn't quite put out that level of effort in an attempt to defraud the system. Mr. Yost.
A tough wolf story. County Auditor Baldwin tells of one of the strangest and most brazen attempts to defraud the state of bounty money for wolf scalps we have heard of. And by the way, the wolf bounty payments are becoming burdensome to the state if other counties are as prolific in these varmints as is our own. From January 1st to May 1st, the bounty is $5 a head. And after the latter date, it is reduced to $3. Since January, the auditor of Lyon County has paid out nearly $1,800, and about 100 scalps have been refused as lacking proper credentials for genuine wolfship. But last Saturday, the King Bee artist in fraud put in an appearance at the county auditor's office with bags containing 3 old mother wolves and 20 pups, with a claim for $115. The law requires that the county auditor or his deputy shall clip the ears off all scalps. When the ear cutting from the pups began, the claimant was very accommodating and insisted upon holding the head with one hand and with the other holding the ear in such a manner the officer could do the cutting without any further trouble. But with the third head, the auditor noticed something peculiar, and calling a halt, proceeded to make closer inspection. To his amazement, he found the ear was simply a piece of hide cut in the shape of an ear in a most artistic manner, and it was sewed onto the scalp. He then discovered that the scalp was not a young wolf, but probably a muskrat or a hare. Further examination disclosed that every one of the 40 ears had been manufactured and deftly sewed to the 20 scalps. Then there was a scene between the auditor and the fraudulent bounty man. The atmosphere was blue and of a sulfurous odor. The man was abashed, but admitted the fraud, saying the work was so nicely done, he thought it would pass muster. Unfortunately, the auditor's anger and amazement prevented him from allowing the man to make the usual sworn statement, upon which conviction might follow, and the rascal landed in prison for a term of years. The fellow's name is T.C. Fitzsimmons, and he is a brother of County Commissioner Fitzsimmons of Murray County. He says he lives in Lyon County, near Ballatin, but probably lies, and is a resident of Murray County. He said he chased one of the old wolves 3 days in order to have a sufficient number of old ones to create no suspicion regarding the large number of young ones.
All right, number eight. $20, $30, $30 and $30, $30, $30, want to get $30, we'll give $30. $20 and $30, $30, $30, $40, $40, $40 and $40, $40, $40, $40, $30 and $40. $40 and $40 and $40, $40 and $40 and $40, $40, $40, $40, who said 40? Thank you, 40, 50, 50, 50, $60 land. $60 and $60, now $60 and $60, $60, $60 and we've seen it before. You wait till the end and they bring 200. $60, $60, got 50 back here and 60. Were you in at 60? 60. 50. All right, well, just check and see if you're listening. All right, 50, 60. $60 and $60, $60 and 60. You want to get $60 now 60. I got 50 back there. $60 out 70. $70, $70 up and now $70. Who will give $70, $70, $70 and $60 and 70? $70 and 70, $70, $70, 60 and 70. $70. Sold. $60. Wayne McLaughlin. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Now, moving on to the next reading. The year is 1910. There was no internet. There was no Netflix, no movie theaters, no television, not even radio. In other words, entertainment options were somewhat limited. So sometimes the populace would turn to, you call it unconventional and maybe even sometimes illegal means to entertain themselves. This article, published on September 23rd, reported on one such event, the fabled dog and badger fight. Here to read it is Jane Wailaji. And she's got props. All right.
Hello. My story is kind of short, so I thought I needed some props. Nice to see everybody out there. And the story, as he said, is from 1910, and I felt that was an omen because that's the year my father was born. He would have been 112 next month, and so it just made me think about my dad, and also that it's the kind of story he would have told, or maybe he would have participated in these shenanigans as newspapers kind of brought that fun to people, like Greg was saying. I got to set the scene for you. So I am a farmer. I've got a bale. I've got a bale of hay. Well, you could read it if you want. Well, I got the best hat I could find. We have a bale of hay because we're in a barn, and that's the setting. It's fall, as we mentioned. It's September, so we got a few things for fall coming around the corner. You know, a day not unlike today. And the setting is Thorburns barn. I don't know where that was exactly in town, but again, imagine the hay. And then we've got the players. And in this story, they're called the sports. And I had to read it a couple times to understand that the sports were sports fans. So we got sports fans in the barn. And then the key characters. The telephone gang you'll be hearing about, and that's along with Mr. Griffiths, their boss, and then Ole. He's the owner of the Atlantic Hotel. Local police force is involved. And then you're going to find out there is a nice looking terrier. Perhaps it was a little more on the nasty looking side than this guy. And a badger. So, can you imagine what the story's going to be? Did you attend the dog and badger fight in Thorburns barn the other night? The telephone gang have among them a splendid specimen of a bull terrier, and ever since he's been here, some of the sports have been anxious to have a fight, and were accommodated through the management of Mr. Griffiths of the telephone company and Ole Ostern of the Atlantic Hotel. There was necessarily much secrecy, yet about 100 would-be sports were let in on the deal. As the shades of Sunday evening obscured the last flickering ray of the setting sun, the congregation were seen by an observant policeman meandering towards Thorburns barn, going in ones, twos, and threes, and at the doors looking about with ill-conceived indifference, dodging within, till about 100 sports were scattered about the premises, perched on wagons, rafters, and half hiding among the drays and carriages. At a psychological moment, Griffiths appeared with the handsome bull terrier, and around him a ring of humanity formed. Then Ostern came forward, arrayed in his dining room style, with a big smile and a fair degree of self-conscious dignity and importance, and opened exercises with a heartfelt speech in which he explained the gravity and danger of their situation and showed a tender sentiment for the badger. Ole had been orating by a barrel in which the badger was under some hay, and he invited someone to release the animal. One or two inspected the situation, but lacking nerve to handle his badgership, declined. Finally, one of the telephone gang said he'd do it, and stepping forward and carefully feeling his way, suddenly gave a vigorous pull and landed in the ring. A large piece of yellow night service crockery ware. Not a badger. A second of consternation, and then a great shout, and as policeman Maxon jumped out of a hack with gun and billy drawn, the crowd made a rush for the doors, and no rain checks had been issued. The end. There's the croc. Your neck back to you. That was good, you guys. You felt like you were back there in 1910.
Thanks, Gene. All right, we got number 7. Number 7. $20, $30, $30, $20, $30, $30, $30, $30, $30, $20, and $30. $30, $30, $30, $30, $40, $40, $40, $40. We'll get $40, $40, $40, $40, and $30, $40, $40, $40, $40. Number 7, $40. $40 and $40, $40, $40 only, $40 and $40, $40, $40, $40, $40, $50, $50, $50, $40, $50, $50 and $60 now, $60, $60, $60, $60, $50, $60, $50 up and now $60, $60, Tim wanting a $60 now, $70, $70, $60 and $70, $70, $70 and $60 and $70, $60 and $70 and $70 and $70 and $60, $70, $70, $60 and $70, $70, sold, $60. Tim Swanson, thank you.
If you had asked me before we got started tonight which of these readers would have brought props, I'd have guessed her, right? There wouldn't have been a second guess. Okay, now, as I previously alluded to, life was tough on the prairie. We had fatal blizzards, hordes of grasshoppers devouring fields, uncontrollable fires that would threaten to destroy entire towns, and apparently massive packs of wolves roaming the prairie grass. And then you had disease. There was an outbreak of Russian influenza, or La Grippe, as it was more commonly referred to, in the 1880s. And there was a diphtheria outbreak in 1894 that led to a massive quarantine in the community. And of course, the Spanish influenza pandemic of 1918 that killed people throughout the world, and 10 local residents as well in less than 2 weeks. For our next reading, though, we're going to have Ryan Stramp recount a story published August 20th, 1925, which reports on a much more unusual outbreak, anthrax. Mr. Ryan.
I have a quick aside before I begin my reading this evening. As production was ramping up, Mr. O'Rear asked me to look into different ways to import all the old articles from the vintage newspapers so we could work them into the book. We had different sources with varying levels of readability. Scanning was not as efficient as we would like, and I had the idea to use dictation software. I grabbed a random article from the stack and read it into my cell phone. Later, I sent Mr. O'Rear a text with the article details, words per minute, etc. Unfortunately, I picked an article with a problematic keyword. Now please keep in mind the Patriot Act is still in full effect, and you can't talk about camping near an Alexa without Google trying to sell you camping gear. The following morning, I received this email from Mr. O'Rear. Subject, anthrax. And the first line of the email said, "Looks good, not as quick as I'd like." So if anyone noticed any extra FBI helicopters in the neighborhood last December, sorry, that was us. 2 persons are ill. 20 cattle dead from disease thought to be anthrax. Malady confirmed to only 1 farm. Father and son are rushed to Mayo Hospital in Rochester. Doctors attempting to prevent spread of a deadly contagious disease. August 20. 20 cattle are dead on the Richard DeVos farm, 10 miles west of Green Valley, and Mr. DeVos and a 10-year-old son are in a Rochester hospital as a result of an outbreak of a deadly disease. The first animals died July 24, and other since last Saturday. Every effort has been made to save the remainder of the herd through vaccination. Mr. DeVos skinned the carcass July 24, and it is thought that he and the boy became infected with the disease at that time. While the disease has not been definitively identified as anthrax, every indication points to the conclusion that it is. Microscopic examination of the germs, though indicating anthrax, were not conclusive, and consequently a specimen was sent to the Minnesota Livestock Cemetery Board for laboratory testing. A guinea pig was inoculated with the disease germs. A telegram received by the News Messenger from Dr. Charles E. Cotton, Secretary of the Livestock Board, at 5 o'clock last night reads as follows. News Messenger, Marshall, Minnesota. Guinea pig not dead, but is showing effects of inoculation. Minnesota Livestock Sanitary Board, Charles E. Cotton. Dr. Guy Young, local veterinarian, was first called to the DeVos farm last Saturday. After making an examination of several dead animals and taking steps to begin vaccination of the others at once, he later discovered in a blood test what seemed to be anthrax germs and spores. The State Livestock Board was notified, and Dr. R. Fenstermacher arrived Tuesday morning to assist in treating the disease. Vaccinate twice. All living cattle on the DeVos farm were vaccinated Monday and revaccinated on Tuesday. Cattle and farms within a radius of 2 miles of the DeVos place are being vaccinated in an attempt to keep the disease from spreading. Dr. J.J. Kelly was called in to assist in fighting the disease. Mr. DeVos and his son were taken ill the latter part of last week, and on Monday were taken to the Mayo Hospital in Rochester. Their condition was reported as fair. The DeVos farm is the only place hit by the disease so far as it is now known. One animal died on the John Bowerboom farm about 2 miles further west some weeks ago, but tests showed no definitive signs of anthrax. All dogs were ordered tied up in Fairview Township the first of the week. For a few fear they might carry the disease. Anyone finding an animal dead should communicate with a veterinarian and the chairman of the local town board at once, Dr. Fenstermacher said before leaving the city Wednesday noon. It is required by law, he said, that in times of disease epidemics, the death of any animal may be reported at once to the town board. Dr. Fenstermacher stressed that the fact that every farmer, for the protection of himself and neighbors, report immediately the death of any animal, whether he suspects the cause was anthrax or something else.
Oops. It's kind of the way the day's been going. Number six, $20. 20 and $30 and $30 and $30 and $30, $20, now 30, $30 and $30. Who will give $30 on number six? $30. Thank you. 30, 40, $40 and $40 and $40 and 40, 40, 40, 30, 40, $40. Anybody else at $40 and 40, 40, $40 and 40, $40 and 40, $40.
Did you get a book?
I'm gonna get one.
Well, I'll buy this one for you.
No, you don't have to buy one for me. I'll buy my own. Thank you. 40, 50, $50. I might not, I can't pay. I don't, my billfold's not, I'll have to pay it tomorrow.
We want to encourage you.
We'll talk about it later. 40, $50, 40, 50, 40, $50, $50 and $50. Got 40 here and $50, $50, $40, and 50, $50 and 50. $50, 60, 50, now 60, $60, $60 and $50 and 60, thank you, now 60, 60, 50, 60. So, $50. I do not know your name. Don't, huh? His father, okay, well, then all right. Great staff, thank you.
Okay. Now, when I mention the Great Depression, one of the first things that comes to mind is dust storms over barren fields and long lines outside a soup kitchen, or a desperate mother and father holding their hungry children with nowhere to call home. But another byproduct of the Great Depression that we saw in the newspapers was a surge in crime, big and small. If you read through the papers of the 1930s, you'll recognize it as the glory days of the gangster. Babyface Nelson, Bonnie and Clyde, John Dillinger, Machine Gun Kelly. Their escapades filled the front pages of the Marshall newspapers and portrayed these criminals as more of a modern-day version of Robin Hood than the ruthless killers they actually were. And in many ways, Marshall's newspapers, like I said, reflected that infatuation, while also containing evidence of the extreme poverty that gripped not only the local community, but the nation at large. There's a story in the paper about a program providing meals to transients who come to town on the railroads, the burning of the hobo jungles, a warning from the mayor to have their parents keep children out of the garbage bins. And we also saw a rise in crime as well, although there weren't any visits from famous gangsters. There was one day, though, a caravan of described gypsies who poured into Marshall and robbed an elderly farmer of nearly $400. That was a considerable sum of money in 1935. Well, Marshall's mayor at the time, W.W. Cook, who would be warning parents even later to keep their kids out of the garbage bins, took matters into his own hands to right that wrong. And here to read the story about that, published May 16th, is Marshall's current mayor, Bob Burns.
Thank you, Greg. May 16, 1935. Courageously pursuing a caravan of 11 gypsy cars and one which were two thieves who had coward-like stolen a large sum of currency from an elderly Marshall resident, Mayor W.W. Cook cornered the culprits single-handedly and unarmed them after a 19-mile chase yesterday and secured the return of the stolen money. The amount was $360, and the victim was 84-year-old William Fleege. Part of the pursuit covered a 2.5-mile chase over dirt roads at a speed of approximately 72 miles per hour. This occurred on concrete, Highway 19 near Vesta, where Mayor Cook and Martin Lindman, the chief of police, overtook 8 of the cars in the caravan. Mayor Cook suspected a ruse on the part of the gypsies, and leaving Chief Lindman in charge of the 8 cars near Vesta, sped in chase of the other 3. He thought their scheme was to leave the other cars behind and thus allow the other 3 to run away with the suspects. His guess was accurate. For about a mile out of Vesta, on a curve, he caught sight of the 3 cars, and among them was a brown Ford V8 with yellow wheels, which a passerby witness had said carried the thieves who had robbed Mr. Fleege. One of the cars continued towards Redwood Falls, but the brown Ford in the other car turned down a side dirt road. Mr. Cook followed them, and after a wild and furious chase, sometimes speeding at 72 miles per hour, he managed to corner them into a ditch. Mr. Cook then ordered them to turn around and follow the pavement back to Marshall. On the other side of Vesta, the captive gypsy car that Mr. Cook's car acting as the rear guard came up on the other 8 cars. By this time, Sheriff Rankin and his deputy, Roy Nyland, who had received word of the robbery, had arrived and headed by them to funeral-like procession back with Mayor Cook and Chief Lindman coming up on the rear in Mayor Cook's car, and they started back to Marshall. In the Lyon County Jail, he confronted with a charge of robbery the gypsies, and they began talking among themselves in their Romani tongue. Mr. Cook, Sheriff Rankin, Chief Lindman could not understand, and it was apparent that these individuals were raising money among themselves. Adjust my glasses here. It was also obvious that they were anxious to shake the dust from Marshall and from their feet. This was all right with the Marshall officials and the Lyon County Sheriff. None of them relished the idea of feeding and boarding and trying 55 gypsy men, women, and children. So as soon as the $360 was put in the hands of the mayor, he let them out of town. Again, funeral-like procession after they had bought cigarettes and had lunch at the corner of Main and 2nd Street, and instructed them that if they were ever seen in Marshall again, that they would be shot on sight by him personally.
number five, $30, $30, $30, $30, $30, $30, $30, $30, $30, $30, $30, $30, we'll give $30, $30 here and $40, $40 and $40, $40, $40, $40, $40, only get $40 and $40, $40 and $30 and $40, $40, $40, $40 and $30, $40, $30, $40 and $40 and $40 and $30, $40 here, $40, $50 bill, want to get $50, $50, got $40 back there now, $50, $50 and $50 and $40 and $50, $50, $50, $40 and $50, $50, $50 and $40, $50, $40 and $50, $50, sold to you back there, $40, and you are? Paula. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you, sir. Now, when going through this book and trying to choose some of the more historic national and state stories, I tried to find ones in which we could tie a Marshall or Lyon County connection to it. This one such story came from the D-Day invasion in Normandy, in which a Marshall grocer, Warren Ward, made a name for himself internationally by flying in, quotes, tons of explosives into the battle. What was most remarkable, though, about Mr. Ward and his efforts was he flew those tons of explosives across the English Channel using a glider. Now, here to read this amazing story of bravery and courage is Jennifer Andrews, the director of the Lyon County Historical Society.
All right, so how Lieutenant W.W. Ward flew ammunition to Normandy on Invasion Day. Marshall glider pilot called the man with tons of death in London newspaper. From Ward Smith, News of the World special correspondent. At a glider base July 13th, this is the story of the man who flew tons of explosives to northern France and got back after some of the most colorful adventures of this war. He is First Lieutenant Warren Ward of Marshall, Minnesota, who before the war used to run a large grocery business and flew his own plane in peacetime. He's still flying, but in more hazardous guise. Now he's a glider pilot. I watched Lieutenant Ward take off on D-Day from here with the most deadly cargo of the whole fleet. He didn't have any airborne troops. He just had a large quantity of urgently needed ammunition. There wasn't anybody that day who cared to ride with him. This is what happened in his own words. I had a bit of trouble getting off the ground. It was rather bumpy. But over the channel, the weather was grand. There wasn't a ripple on the sea, and fortunately, we didn't see a single enemy fighter. I was rearmost of the fleet, and when we reached the French coast, I had a grandstand view of the descent. Our boys had to land on waterlogged ground. Well, I didn't dare try to get down there with my load, so over the intercom, I called on my tug pilot for speed as much as he had. He gave it to me, and we cleared the death trap. But I had to cut loose some time, and when I did, I saw 2 fields the size of postage stamps and decided on them. Folks said they had never seen a glider land so fast. Maybe they hadn't, but if I hadn't taken that chance, I wouldn't have been here now. As it was, the load came down safe just in time. Our boys in the beachhead so sorely needed that ammo. On the ground, around about 110 of us glider pilots gathered together and decided we had better make for the beach and get back to England for more gliders. We had just started out when an infantry major came running after us and said we couldn't go that way. The Germans were in our rear, the boys said. Okay, let's go and meet them. That was their spirit. They were rare and mad. They got madder still as snipers kept pounding at us from the trees. Suddenly, a couple of Germans stepped out and stuck a gun in my ribs. They said, "You are prisoners." My buddy and I said, "Who the heck told you that?" and chipped them on the chin, and clipped them on the chin. You see, we were so darn mad at them, on the way out we had seen some of the bomb damage in English towns. We had nearly got to the beach when we ran into a machine gun nest. There were 7 Germans firing from the belfry of a village church. Our boys just lobbed grenades up at them and ran up the stairs. It was good to see those Germans then. They just left their gun and gibbered at our glider pilots. They hadn't any stomach for our boys' bare hands. We took all 7 down to the beach and handed them over. There was a beach marshal around, and he came up to me as cool as a cucumber, though the heinies were strafing us from the air pretty heavily. "Glider pilot," he said, "your stateroom is ready, sir," and led me aboard a British monitor which took me back to England. That's about all that happened. It's nothing to what a lot of other glider pilots did. And when it comes to a real story, why any of the British airborne troops could put the lid on this. Thank you.
All right, number 4. $30, $30 and get no one get $30 and $30, $30, $30 and get $30, $30, $30, $30, $30 and $40, $40, $40 and $40, $40, $40, $40. Want to get $40, don't want to get $40, $40, now $50. $40 and $50, $50 and $50, $40 and $50. $40 and $50, $50, $50, $40, $50, $50, $50. $40 and $50 and $50 and $40, $50 and number 4, $50. $40 and $50 and $50 and $40 and $50. $50. Sold $40. Bill Palmer, thank you.
When people heard I was working on a book about the history of Marshall, the most frequent comment I heard was, well, you have to have something in there about the flood of '57. Well, that message was received loud and clear, so we actually have 2 full pages dedicated to what is probably the most devastating natural disaster in Marshall's history, at least in terms of real property damage. The flood will also be the catalyst for many of the infrastructure improvements we now have to prevent a recurrence of that event. And here now is the Independent news editor, Cindy Votruba, who's going to read some of the briefs published June 20th, recapping that chaotic sequence of days.
Flood for the ages. And here's some flood briefs from June 20th. Eureka, says Mrs. Don Olson, making a profound discovery after using boiling water. It tastes better that way. She was also fascinated by the fact that although water was everywhere, swirls of dust were rounding the corner. Here's something else that only could happen in Marshall. Richard DeShepper was mowing his lawn on one side of the house, and on the other side, the pump was throwing water out of the basement. Mrs. Adler Hebert is thankful for one thing. Her husband saved his gunwood from the waters of the basement of their home near the bridge of 4th Street North. Adler makes his own gun stocks and does a beautiful job. While the family was laboring to get the washing machine out of the basement, Hebert was gathering up his choice wood. They may not have saved everything, but the gun stock business goes on. No man is an island, but sometimes it's close. It was reported that near Vesta, one farm place was completely marooned, and over that away, about 56 head of cattle were marooned on another island. Manager Glenn Bennett of the Bennett Warehouse reports a loss of $250,000 worth of merchandise. There are 4 feet of syrupy goo composed of sugar and powdered eggs. The only communication in Westside Grade School was by Army Duck. The basement was completely filled, but was pumped dry by Wednesday. No estimate can be made as yet to the amount of damage to the electrical and heating equipment in the basement. Harry Allen and Gilbert Beers, caretaker of the building, were stranded in the school all day. and food was brought to them once a day. No damage was reported at the East Side Grade School.
Is it gonna freeze tonight? It is? I gotta go pick tomatoes? Yes, you do, all right. All right, hey, number three, $30, $30, $30, $30, $40, $40, $40, $40, $40, $40, $40, $40, $50, $50, $50, Mary, you wanna get $50, $50 and $60 and $60 and $60, only three left now, $60, if you've been waiting around, the $40 stuff is gone, I know, huh? You already bought one? 50, 60, 50 now and 60, but it's not number three. Oh, no. 50, 60, $60 and $60 and $60 and $50 and $60, $50 and $60 and $60 and $60 and 50, 60, 50, 60, 60, $60. Anybody else at $60 and $60 and 60, 50, 60? $60? Sold it to you, Mary, $50. Mary Kate, thank you.
Now, obviously, in addition to the previously mentioned second railroad coming to town, another very important day in the history of Marshall was when the state decided to open a college here. With Southwest, what was then Southwest State College, opening to students in 1967, it brought an entirely new dynamic to Marshall. More jobs were created, and the college attracted speakers like Ralph Nader a few years later and performers such as John Denver. Also, an entirely different population moved to the quiet and conservative Marshall. College kids, and not just ordinary college kids in the 1960s. As a result, soon after the college opened, there was a story on Marshall's first narcotics arrest in 1968. There was racial unrest reported at the college as mirroring some of the attitudes and unrest seen throughout the nation. And as seen throughout America at the time, these college students were prone to protest, as seen on the streets of Marshall. Here to read a story published May 12, 1972, about one of those protests is Mr. Jim Tate, the former communications director at SMSU and editor of The Independent. Mr. Tate.
Thank you, Greg. Before I begin, I just wanted to fix this. Thank you for all your hard work. Greg really shepherded this project through its various stages and really is the driving force behind all of this. Thank you for your work. This story, May 12th, 1972, peaceful vigil ends day of 166 protester arrests. A day of anti-war demonstrations, which began with a peaceful interruption of highway traffic, ended Thursday with a peaceful vigil at the Marshall Municipal Building. In between, 166 Marshall residents were arrested and charged with either a petty misdemeanor or a misdemeanor of obstructing a state highway. The 166 included 107 males and were freed without bond by Lyon County Probate Judge B.V. Perard upon recommendation of Lyon County Attorney Patrick Leary. As peaceful as the protesters were, so were the Marshall Police in handling the demonstrators who were protesting the escalation of war in Vietnam. The Thursday morning protesters exchanged praise with law enforcement officers on the attitudes of each other. The demonstrators informed police several hours before the 7:15 a.m. sit-in near Liberty Park, and police were waiting there with two buses to haul them to jail. When informed they were arrested, the demonstrators walked quietly to the buses. In the afternoon, 47 protesters lined up across 4-lane Main Street in front of the municipal jail and locked arms. Marshall Police Captain George Davis first told the entire group they were under arrest and then spoke individually to each person. As Captain Davis concluded each speech, a demonstrator was given his or her choice to voluntarily walk across the street to jail. Those who didn't walk were picked up by 2 policemen and carried across the street. Captain Davis said afterward the 29 people who had to be carried could possibly face another charge of resisting arrest. That was also explained to each protester before being carried away. As midnight approached, an estimated 150 to 200 students were in the Central Academic Building at Southwest State College and were deciding what to do. Those free on bond were told not to break laws or they would be returning to jail. The only scheduled activity for today is a talk show on KMHL Radio. It will begin at 2 p.m. and persons with opinions on the war are invited to the station, are invited by the station management to call in. Thank you.
All right, number 2, 2 left, 30, 40. Oh, 30,000, 40,000, 40, 40, 40, 40,000, 40,000, 40, 40, 40, 50, 50, 50, 50, 50, 50 dollars, 40 and 50, 50,000, 50,000, 50,000, 40, 50 dollars, 50,000, 60, 60 dollars, 60 dollars, 60, 60, 60,000, 70,000, 70,000, 70 dollars, 70, no, 70, 70, 70 dollars, 70 dollars, 70 dollars. Can you do that? Thank you. Now 70, 80, 80, 80, 80 dollars, 80 dollars, and 90, 90 dollars, and 90 dollars, and 90. I think this is going to bring 200. $90 are number 2, 90. 80, 90. Think about it for a little bit. Don't say yes, I'm wrong, but now 90, 90, 90, 80, 90, 80, 90, $90 and 90, $80 and 90, $90 and 90, $90 and 90, want to get $90, no, that should be $90, 90, 80, 90, 80, $90 and 90, $90, no, 90, $90 and 90, sold, $80, the Swansons, thank you.
One little addendum I'll add to Mr. Tate's story regarding that protest. The Independent at the time was a fairly conservative publication, and they decided, for whatever reason, to list the 166 names of the individuals arrested that day. It took all 6 columns, about half a page, to list them all, because it also identified where they lived and whether they were a student or a professor. And the very first name listed there, and I don't think this gentleman would mind me saying this now, because I'm sure he's probably proud of this civil unrest, was Joseph Motto. So, now for our final reading of the night, we have another former Independent editor, Mr. Per Peterson. Unlike the rest of the articles I read tonight, Per actually remembers writing this one for the November 21st, 2005 edition of the Independent. And it was for good reason, as it was one of those opportunities to write about something good. The return of our local National Guard members to their family after a 14-month deployment to Iraq. Mr. Peterson?
Just quickly, I'd like to thank Greg for the invitation tonight, and Mr. Deitz for his work. It's also a treat for me to be able to be in the same room as my 2 newspaper mentors, Dana and Jim. I don't think we've been in the same room since probably the early 90s. It's been a while. Home again, emotions run high for families. Area families welcome back loved ones Friday as Minnesota National Guard troops from the 151st Artillery, A Battery, came home just in time for Easter. Excitement and relief were the 2 dominant emotions expressed by families of the soldiers from the 1st Battalion. 151st Artillery, A Battery, as they waited outside the Marshall National Guard Armory on Friday morning for the troops to arrive in 3 buses. She danced when she got the call, Curtis Sanderud said of his wife, Janine. Their grandson, Specialist Blaine Sanderud, called from Maine. He was finally in the States, said Curtis, a Korean War veteran. Mark and Pat Timmerman were waiting for son, Sergeant Clayton Timmerman. Excited and probably relieved. You know they're home, said Pat, looking at all the American flags being held by volunteers. The Patriot Guard and all those guys do a wonderful job. Happy, said Mark. Relieved, yeah. Get some normalcy back in our lives. Excited, my primary emotion anyway. On the verge of tears sometimes, said Emily Baldry, who was waiting for her husband, First Lieutenant Brant Baldry, with their kids Isaac and Nora, and extended family. Excitement, anxious, said Melissa Lemke, as she watched her children, Jacob and Kaylee Lemke, run among the flags stuck in the grass as they waited for husband and father, Specialist Brandon Lemke. Relief, said Jess Sanderud, watching her infant son Christian ride on the shoulders of his uncle Spencer. Christian was born while Jess's husband, Specialist Blaine Sanderud, was deployed. Specialist Sanderud got to see his son on leave at Thanksgiving. All the guys are back. We had a bunch of friends go over, Jess said. Todd Van Hilven and his daughter Megan Ramos were waiting for son and brother, Specialist John Ramos. Tomorrow we get to go into Appleton to welcome home mom and sister, Van Hilven said, referring to his wife, Specialist Dawn Van Hilven, and daughter, Specialist Kimberly Ramos. All 3 soldiers are with the 151st. I am beyond excited, said Megan. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank Greg for asking me to come in. This has been a pleasure. Good to see you all. And this is the last one, number 1 of 2000, right? 1 of 2000. 25, $50, $50, $50, $50, $75, $75, $75, $75, $75, and 75, 75, 75, 75, and $100, and $100, 75, $100, 125, 1 and a quarter, 125, 125, 125, 125, 125, 125, 125, 125, and 25, 25, 150, 150, 150, 150, 150, 175, $175 and 75, 175, 150 and 175 and $175, $175, and we don't have to sell it at 150 just because it's 150 years. Still, we can push it higher.
It's priceless.
It's priceless. It is. It's 175, 160, 160, 160.
I'm not going to spend that much.
160. $160 and $160, 150, 160. $160 and 60, $160. $160 and 160, 150, 160. $160 and 1 last chance at 160, 150, 160. $160 and $60, $160 and 150, 160, 150, 160. $160 and 150, 160. Last chance at 160, 160, 150, 160. Mayor Burns, $150. Let's give him a big hand. Have a great night.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dykes. I appreciate you taking time out. Fantastic job as always. And thank you everybody for showing up tonight and bidding and supporting the Historical Society. Again, I'll remind you that you can settle up with Jennifer here, or you can see me afterwards to pay for those books if you got one through the auction. And again, thank you very much for coming. We've got lots of cake left. Please eat some, so I don't have to take it all home. And if you haven't picked up your book, they are available in the Minnesota room there, right behind you. So again, thank you very much everybody for coming, and have a nice evening.